Welcome. Thank you all so much for joining our session today about developing Arctic Adventure, Exploring with Technology. It's a digital immersive climate change exhibit at the Museum of Science. We are so excited to share with you our process today. We'll be talking about approaches to creating accessible and climate content-rich exhibit that showcases large-scale projection technology that we really hope would transport visitors to the Arctic. And we'll also be talking about how we did this during COVID times.
Hi, I'm Alana Parks. I am the manager of exhibit content development at the Museum of Science, and I was on and off lead content developer on this exhibition.
And I'm Leigh Mesiti Caulfield. I'm the manager of strategy and communication in the Museum of Science, and I was the lead evaluator on this project.
Hello, I am Cloé St-Cyr. I am a multimedia director at Moment Factory, which is a firm based in Montreal that was hired by the museums to kind of design with them all the multimedia aspect of this project. So rapidly, for those who don't know us, Moment Factory, we're a quasi-unique multimedia and entertainment studio based in Montreal, and we're specialized in the creation, design, and production of multimedia environments. And so for this project, we were complementary with the museum to create the immersiveness and the multimedia content in the project.
Leanne, are you doing this slide? Am I doing this slide?
Alana, yeah.
Oops, sorry, I forgot. The Museum of Science, our mission, we're a large science museum in Boston, Massachusetts, and our mission is to inspire a lifelong love of science in everyone. And our vision is a world where science belongs to each of us for the good of all of us. And, you know, we're a big science museum. And so Cloé, while you bring up the video, we have a 1-minute video to give you a flavor of the Arctic Adventure exhibition. The first thing to notice, it goes by so fast. The first thing to notice is the overall feel of the exhibition, and you'll also see several examples of integrated physical and digital aspects. There is no sound, sorry.
It just gives a sense of kind of what this gallery looks like in person.
We have a real ice wall.
That was a real ice wall, yes.
As well as multiple projection surfaces. And we play really with the physical, digital aspect where you can intervene by touching physical instruments and elements inside the content, the projected content. And our last zone, navigating a glacier.
So we're going to go through a little bit of the process of creating this exhibition. For Arctic Adventure, our starting point was our main message, which is that you can use technology to explore our environment and to identify problems that we need to solve. We also had some educational goals relating to the use of technologies to make observations about the environment and about being able to identify the affordances and constraints of different technologies. And we had some experience. You'll notice that those educational goals don't actually tie you down to any particular technology. And we also similarly had some experience goals that we wanted visitors to feel transported. We wanted them to feel curious. And we wanted them to be able to actually use technology to explore the environment. And we wanted there to be something new each time they came, so that it wasn't exactly the same experience each time. But again, you'll notice that that doesn't really tie us down to anything in particular. And so for this exhibition, we really decided to lead with the experience. This was something we took really seriously. We spent about a year, I'm not quite sure because I wasn't on the project, but we spent about a year before we even knew what the context was going to be for the exhibition. We brainstormed a whole bunch of different types of experiences, and from our initial 60s, that we had seen at other museums or experienced in other venues like theme parks, for example. And from our initial 67 ideas, we narrowed down to 7. And then the next slide, please, Chloe. So did we want an all digital environment? Did we want one that used virtual reality or augmented reality? Did we want an immersive physical structure like the example here from the City Museum in St. Louis? Did we want to focus on a particular challenge like escape rooms do? So from these 7, we finally narrowed down to a digital environment with physical manipulatives. This fit in really well with our commitment to universal design, which means making exhibits accessible to all audiences, and that worked better than, say, an all digital or an all virtual exhibition. And our main inspiration for this was Connected Worlds at the New York Hall of Science. Yes, now we're ready for the next slide. So after some discussion about what kind of context we wanted for that experience, we considered things like a hacker space or superheroes, among other ideas. We finally settled on wanting to focus on a natural environment that visitors could explore with technology. But which one? So we made a list of 7 habitats, and with a little more testing with visitors and also with teachers who might bring their classes in on field trips, we finally selected, surprise, the Arctic. And while this process felt really backwards for me, especially as a content developer, it was really interesting to hold the visitor experience at the center while the content shifted during the development process. And I'm sure that we're going to try this model again. In choosing the Arctic, that also meant that we got the opportunity to talk about climate change. The observations that visitors make with technologies that they're using reveal evidence of a changing climate, both in the history recorded in the ice cores that you get to remove with ice drills, and the present and future facing the animals as the climate changes that they get to find with drones and satellite trackers. It's really, really interesting to me to think about what this exhibit how it might have been different if we had started with the message of climate change instead of starting with the experience of exploring an immersive environment with technology. I think it came across as a much richer kind of exhibition for that backwards process.
So that's about the moment that we Moment Factory came into the project, when all the subject matter had been decided by the team and all of that, and the museum was looking for a partner to develop a more immersive ambience and to kind of develop this immersiveness and multimedia content, which is our expertise. And so we had a fantastic process of collaboration and a lot of charrettes in the beginning with this experiential team in mind. And today I'll just present you a bit some of the key kind of features that make for us this experience immersive, but also that are standard things that we try to implement in live projects, if I may say, in the in situ projects, which is, first of all, multimedia for all the senses. So a lot of museums or experiences integrate new technology as parts of screens, but we always try to go in non-standard format and get away from the screen and from experiences that people can have on their mobile devices or at home at their place, and really create something that can only happen on site, that's site specific. And to do that, we want to encounter all of the different senses in the experience. And one of the first way to do that is to start considering the actual space as the interface. So instead of adding some screen interfaces into a space, really use the user environment. So the space and the scenography, the floors, the wall, everything as our interface to the content and to the experience. So for us, really, user experience design is not limited to the screen. It's everywhere. It's from the door handle to, what you sit on, to what you're looking at, if it reacts when you touch it, all of that. And that's how we can also connect people to the message and to each other in a space, right? And so in Arctic Adventure, one of the ways we achieved that was, we mentioned the ice wall was very multisensorial, but also some floor projection. So we had like a little water hole where we had some beautiful underwater mammals that were passing, that through technology the visitors can hear and recognize the sound of the animals. But the pièce de résistance, if I may say, was really our open vista. So it's a double-sided projection which really created the environment, the Arctic environment. And that's one of the first things in our mandate that was very clear from the get-go was, okay, we want to step into a place that is coherent throughout the gallery, but also that seems like it's part of an Arctic. And obviously the Arctic is a tremendously unique place that we knew we could not reproduce. So we created our own abstract Arctic, inspiring ourselves quite scientifically accurately with the help of Alana and the whole team to create an abstractly reinterpreted all the different environments of the Arctic. We also have this zone, which was more the one where we touched on climate change, which was about ice core, so drilling of ice core, but also how to, the first thing that we realized, it was very with in the process with that, it was very hard for people to understand that the information that existed in these ice core was the one that we could link to certain, I should actually let Alana speak to that, but hence why this zone, we created a little theater, object theater, but it really became an immersive theater called the Ice Core Theater, where we explain in a 3-minute immersive video why is it that there's all of these information that is stuck in little bubbles and ice core lead us to certain how may I say, conclusion about climate change and about our impact on the planet. Anything to add, Alana?
Just that one of the things that you might not have noticed from the video is that there's 2 drills there. There's one on the tripod, and there's a cable that you can feel as you put your fingers on it, that it moves up and down as you push the button on the little stack of crates there. And as you do that, it's linked with the projection on the wall so that the ice core actually goes up and down. And similarly, sort of in the middle, there's a hand turned ice drill, and that one also corresponds with the video, so that they function independently. So as you turn that drill, you can watch it go down. Really giving the idea that we're drilling down under our feet, and that's where all of this amazing rich data is about our climate going back hundreds of thousands of years.
So again, in this space, it's non-standard format, but also kind of working with what we like to call the phygital, with physical and the digital aspect of space. I know, neologism. Okay.
Nice.
I know. So one of the second thing was this idea of interaction and exploration. So having as a main educational goal, people to understand through their use of technology, but also understanding the affordances of technology, we needed to create a space where they could use things and that things would go wrong, and that they could, understand as they're doing, instead of just giving them the facts that these technologies would have given them. So in this zone, people get to fly a virtual drone and explore all the different ecosystems through a tablet-based control interface, where they can find animals and understand GPS and infrared technologies, and they're guided by like a fellow researcher that's kind of helping them see what are the wins and the problems ahead and all of that. And in order to achieve that, we used a game engine. So basically this content is real-time content. It's generated in real time, just like a video game would be. So we really created a generative Arctic world where the time of the day would influence the position of the sun. Also, the season would evolve throughout the year and throughout the different visits that were possible. And even the content, the animals that were found would change seasonally. So this is a bit the interface of the drone. And so we created really a world with different seasons, so that every time a visitor would come to the museum, they would experience something different. And as I mentioned, this immersive projection was really kind of the centerpiece of our scenography, but the whole lighting design, all of the zones, all of these gradient and colors and affected by the
Summertime.
Yeah, exactly. All of that would kind of influence the lighting design inside the space, the summertime or the winter, for example. And then the third kind of strategy we use is gamification. So, what happens when interaction is not limited to screen is really people start interacting together, and that becomes really interesting because they can be challenged through games to learn things differently. And this game called Navigating a Glacier is like a 2-player game where a navigator needs to lead a trekker across a glacier in order to recuperate scientific equipment and return safely to the base. And in order to do that, they have to navigate a field of deadly crevasses, and they use our object, or how may I say, our connected object we call, which is a GPS that represents the technology of a ground penetrating radar. And they have to understand the different readings of this technology and see if the ground is safe and if they can actually go pick up, or if not, if they're going to lose all their equipment and lose the game. So that's a bit what we tried to achieve multimedia wise, and I'll let Leanne finish.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got creative with our prototyping process in order to rigorously learn as much as we really could from visitors during the development process that informed our final designs and experiences. Next slide. So prototyping during the exhibit development process is pretty standard for the museum, but there were a few new challenges, I would say, with developing this exhibit. So one challenge is that we couldn't develop all of the exhibit pieces ahead of the final production. With it being such a highly digital exhibit, we had to kind of improvise with different types of strategies so that we could learn more about visitor experience and learning along the way. We were also trying to get across a content message that you're using technology to identify problems in an Arctic environment, and that we wanted to make sure that the tech side of this actually did stand out to visitors, and it wasn't just learning the content knowledge about the climate or about the Arctic in this space. So this photo here is actually one of our very early prototyping rounds for the Navigating a Glacier activity, where we were just trying to understand whether visitors could get that they were using a ground penetrating radar to navigate an ice flow, and trying to just get a sense of what this activity flow might look like. So we set up paper crevasses on the floor of the museum. We gave visitors metal detectors, and we had educators on the sideline telling them whether they were safe or not safe as they were navigating the space.
The metal detectors, I'm just going to jump in and say the metal detectors consisted of dowels with cardstock discs on them, and we had taped walkie-talkies to the stick so that they could communicate with their navigator and tell them whether they were safe or not. And there was some beeping. The walkie-talkies was not my idea, but it was super genius.
It's a way to sort of just to let us get a sense. And it was, I would say, probably pure chaos at this point, but the visitors were really excited about the activity, and we learned a lot about just some of the kind of support that we would need to also provide visitors to be successful in this type of activity. Next slide, please. So down the road, we developed different versions of the ground penetrating radar. So starting with those discs and walkie-talkies, but here you can kind of see a couple of interim version on the left that helped us start to understand the design of this device, like, how the handle should be, how the components might fit into this casing all together. And then the photo on the right shows the insides of our final design for the GPR in the space. So there are several phases of evaluation that help us along the way when we develop an exhibit. So one of the earlier parts is doing story testing. And it's a way for us to kind of hone in on the kind of content we want to share, understanding visitor questions and maybe their baseline knowledge about a certain topic or direction we want to go in. And also just a sense to see where some of the visitor interests lie. This top picture here is an example of so in the entryway, there are a number of different artifacts that visitors can that represent things that they're going to be seeing later in the exhibit. And they can touch them and they can start to see some of the screens that the outputs from those at the start. But we were trying to just figure out what kind of technology we would want to showcase at the entryway. So we had a group of middle school girls add different sticky dots to indicate their interest or disinterest in some of the different artifacts that we were considering. And then we followed up with them about some of their initial impressions and potential questions about this artifacts, knowing that this would be some of the first things that visitors would see upon entering the gallery. And this helped our team determine what type of information might be helpful to share about the artifacts, and also what kinds of things would excite visitors upon entry. We do formative evaluation from story testing, where we test different iterations of activity prototypes to learn more about the activity flow, the learning and usability. And those activities can be more or less hardened in this stage. This bottom picture is an example of a more developed prototype that helped us get closer to the final design in the space. So visitors could try out this large drill with a draft label. And at this point, we were able to learn a little bit more about the usability and learning. It's a little hard to see in this picture, but this cutout at the bottom was actually purposeful so that if we had somebody who was in a wheelchair, that they would be able to pull up alongside. And so we wanted to try to get that positionality kind of right in the early things before we started to fabricate the final thing. And then, from there, we do a remedial once the exhibit is open to help us learn more about how the exhibition is working at a whole, and if there's any kind of final changes we want to make to the gallery before kind of completing everything. And then this next year, we'll be doing a summative evaluation to learn more about the impacts. Some other strategies that we do during this time is important part of the process is sharing some of these findings along the way with the team. So for this project, it meant sharing findings not only with the MOS team, but also with Moment Factory. So we helped to organize visitor feedback into reports that summarize those main findings and what those action items might be for the next iteration of an activity, and also detail some of the visitor quotes that really try to illustrate the visitors' experiences in their own words. Hearing things in visitors' own voices and own words can be really helpful in helping us really understand kind of where they are with this activity and where we want to go with it. At a pivotal part, I would say, in our development process, we held a prototyping weekend blitz at the museum. And so this was a time where both the MOS team and Moment Factory could come and see visitors interact with activities, discuss together in real time, make changes that we kind of needed to make at that time. And this was important for us to help to gain a shared understanding of our visitors and how they interact in a museum environment. So we invited some groups with disabilities into the space so we can answer some specific questions that we had some of these activities, as well as on the floor visitor recruitment, which is pretty standard for most of these different phases. So the different photos here just kind of show some different prototypes in different places. Accessibility is a very important factor for us when developing a new exhibit. We really want to make sure that all visitors can learn and have a good time in an exhibition. Next slide. And these are some of the strategies we use to help push forward an accessible design of the exhibit. As Alana noted earlier, universal design and universal design for learning, those are two frameworks that we really go to when we're developing exhibits. And this is where the changes to the activities, where better for everyone is the goal. So we consider accessibility from a physical, a social, a cognitive, and an emotional perspective. And we want to make sure that there are multiple ways for visitors to be able to engage and express themselves through learning at different exhibits. One of the things we also did when developing this exhibit was make a UD plan for each of the exhibit components to make sure that we were kind of thinking through all the details for the experience. We developed that plan also with the museum's ADA and 504 coordinator too. And I feel like these resources were helpful for us to kind of stay accountable to some of our design decisions and also be able to flag questions that came up so we could discuss as a team, how we're addressing this and what have we not thought about so far. Multisensory, can you go back a moment, Chloe? Thanks. Multisensory experiences are also really key when we're thinking about accessibility. So this comes up in several different ways throughout the exhibit. So the tactile elements like the bronze birds, the ice wall that visitors could feel, different models of the technology throughout. The GPR was another thing we were really trying to make sure that there were different types of feedback. So as you trek on the ice and locate crevasses, you get feedback by text, there's colors for safe and unsafe, and it also vibrates too. So that when you go over a crevasse, it's like very clear that there's something there that needs your attention. The intro video for that activity also includes captions and has audio for the instructions. The hydrophones activity in this, the visitors listen to underwater sounds to try to identify an animal that they're hearing. To support this identification, visitors listen to the sound through broadcast audio, and then they also can refer to these different visuals of the sound clip as well. We also have here in this picture, you can see that the buttons are shaped different, they have different shapes, and that's to also help a visitor who is blind to be able to navigate the activity as well. And there's a picture here just with someone kind of trying out our GPR in real time. The Ice Core Theater in this bottom picture, that was actually challenged with its floor to ceiling videos. And so we wanted to make sure that there were captions, but they had to be in a place where anybody kind of in that theater could see. So we worked with Moment Factory to kind of get a certain shape that made it feel like it was seamless with the video, but also that you were able to get that written information as the video happens too. Next slide. And of course, we started developing this exhibit in normal times, but we got to the finish line in COVID times, and we learned a lot from working with each other and working together. So, and these are just some of the key points that we kind of pulled away from our collaboration.
Yeah, we found that a variety of ways of interacting was really the best for us. That we, of course, by necessity, traveling from Boston to Montreal was, a bit of an expense. So we tried to work remotely when we could, but every couple months we would get together in person, either in Montreal or in Boston, and that those opportunities to work in person really helped us, especially in the creative parts of the process, where we needed to do some brainstorming and bouncing ideas, and just getting to know each other personally were really helped the then virtual remote meetings, which were best served by sort of dealing with practical, let's keep this thing moving along. But so that combination really worked well for us.
And I feel like there were some times too where we would be trying to do these virtual sessions and something wasn't quite gelling, and but we decided maybe it would be better if we met in person. And a lot of times that's where we had kind of our breakthroughs and kind of ideas and stuff too. So really, I feel like that pairing is a really important project. We also learned that really having a clear point of contact on both sides was really important. So all of the feedback that teams on both sides had went through the same two individuals on these teams. So the project manager on MOS and the Moment Factory side really sent and received all communication, but they made sure that anything they received was shared then with the right individuals on their respective teams, and that helped to streamline kind of our thoughts and ideas across both groups.
Definitely, and on the third point, honesty and co-creative teamwork mindset, we knew when we met the museum team that this was not a special client for us, and we work in a vast array of different industries, but we felt like this time there was really an atmosphere of trust and honesty and how may I say, collaboration for real, that really made us open up our kind of drawing books and our whole process, which normally we tend not to do as a consultant firm. We have learned through the years to kind of show the results of our process to the clients and have clear touch points, whereas on this side we just did it as if MOS team was part of Moment Factory team and vice versa, and really just open it up. And I think that made a humongous difference, because often the solutions to certain problems don't come from where you expect them, and or from necessarily the person that has that hat on the project. It comes from somewhere else, and that's really how we learn to work together. So I think having a complementary team, yes, but also being honest and open might seem tacky, but really made the success, in my humble opinion, of this project.
Yeah, I think that we respected each other's strengths, and we were willing to hear whatever the other partner had to say. It was, I think, co-creation is the key word there, that we really worked together very well, and synergistically. And then COVID. And so we had to
Yep.
we had to do the last bunch of work and then open the exhibition with COVID restrictions. And I have to say that that everybody was forced to work remotely really changed our remote meetings, and having each individual on screen versus, we used to Moment Factory had a camera that looked at everybody in the room, and so you could see all the people, but you couldn't see them very close up. And at the Museum of Science, we maybe had a camera on somebody's laptop, but it was, boy, doubling down and just saying, yes, we're going to figure out how to do remote stuff well, made a huge difference. And I think we have all benefited from just learning how to do that better.
Oh, sorry. I switched the slide.
And then there was just a huge amount of flexibility that was required, in terms of the number of people that Moment Factory wanted to send down for the integration and opening, and how much we could do that remotely, how much our staff could help with that. There was just a huge amount of flexibility that was required to make that work.
I don't know how we are on time. Unfortunately, I don't see my text box, but I think we have one last slide that we can conclude on. Leanne, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, I think we're doing just fine on time.
Great.
So it's exciting because we are now just also starting to learn a little bit more about visitors' perceptions of the exhibit. We just conducted a remedial evaluation that involved exit interviews and surveys with visitors that went to the gallery. And so these are just some of the starting things that we're learning. Experience-wise, visitors indicated that they felt transported to the Arctic in this space. They really appreciated the interactive opportunities, some of the immersive qualities, and also the way that the exhibit is sort of its own cohesive space was kind of a theme that we're seeing. Most memorably, visitors have been calling out the Navigate the Glacier activity that's near the exit, and involves the digital and the physical interaction, and also the ice wall entryway to. It's something that people don't expect to see, and so when they notice it's there, it's pretty cool. But it was also exciting to see that most of the groups, that almost all the exhibits have been noted by at least one group too, which I think speaks to kind of the overall gallery. Visitors are connecting with the learning goals. They're talking about the affordances and constraints of using technology in the Arctic, and also about the Arctic environment. And they are making different climate change connections as well. And accessibility is something that we're going to be exploring a lot more in our summative, but from the few groups that were part of the remedial, the pairing of different accessible features like having audio and text, or visual cues, and the vibrating cues, those kinds of things are working well in tandem for visitors. And there are some areas of improvement that I think we'll dig into a little bit more, like some of the controls for the drone activity. We knew going into this activity was going to be a little bit more complex than maybe some of the other ones too. So there's a lot for us to learn, and we'll be exploring these themes even more in the summative. So it's really exciting.
Thank you, Leanne.
Yeah. And that's a wrap for us, but we're happy to use any of the remaining time for questions or discussion. And we're really excited that all of you joined us today.
We can't hear you,
we
Sam.
Can't hear you. Unfortunately, we still can't.
Okay. I don't know if there have been any questions in the chat or if
I have the chat open. I don't see any questions, but feel free to put them there or to just unmute yourself.
Oh, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. No.
Heard someone a second ago.
Hello? Do
Yes,
you hear me?
I can hear you.
I'm sorry for this misworking, but one of my computer broke and the line went down. So really apologize.
Bad luck.
Your presentation was wonderful. I really appreciate that. I think that everybody has appreciated the huge work you have done. The quality really amazing. I have questions. I do not know if other attendees have questions. If they have, I will go in the queue. If they don't, I will go first. Is there anyone who wants to put questions? No one jumps in. Okay, I start. One thing that impressed me is the huge spaces you have been able to set up. Also, Arctic, yes, we could say must be huge, but effectively, I think it has not been an easy task to set up all those things together. So the question is, do you think that is the scalability or the transfer of your knowledge into a new experience? Because effectively you are in the center of the world attention for the problem that is now on, and being able to open up your experience to others so that they can replicate, they can take it up and do it again in other places. I think that would be really great for teaching to other countries, to other places about the Arctic, the effects and the experiences that you set up, and the learning that you provide to people that are attending to your event. So do you think that you are going to replicate it? Are you going to make it in a different scale? Is it possible for you, or what is your plan for the future about it?
Do you mean like climate change in general, or immersive immersive exhibitions?
Exhibition, yeah.
Or
about
Arctic Adventure in particular, or just in general?
So we
because one
designed
is
this.
Arctic, but I think that also other areas, Earth areas, you might address, and that would be really great to know what is the future that you see from it, even if I might.
We're definitely looking at immersive spaces. I'm working on an exhibition right now that actually is also about climate change, but at an international level. And we're looking at trying to, in December, we're opening a test gallery that'll feature Venice. And so we're looking at using video, 10-foot by 30-foot wide immersive screens and life-size graphics on the wall. So we're definitely working on immersivity. I think the combination, what did you call it? Phygital. I love that. We definitely work a lot in that realm, and we'll continue working in that space.
I think
you said Venice. Did I hear wrong?
Venice, yeah.
That's great.
Italian, yeah. But
that's really great. And so probably you are also addressing topics that are related to water that in Venice.
Yes,
Oh, okay. In which period?
Current.
Arctic Adventure. Sorry, Alana.
Yeah, go ahead, Leigh.
Arctic Adventure was designed as a permanent exhibit for the Museum of Science. But the hope is that, as we've learned a lot from creating that exhibit already, and we'll continue to learn more in the summative evaluation too. And so a lot of that learning is then being funneled into how we're thinking about the project that Alana was talking about. And so the hope is that we just continue to learn kind of by doing these pieces.
Yes, the exhibition I'm working on will be a traveling one. So again, we're trying to figure out, as Cloé was saying, really, they will really work on place-based stuff. And there's a lot that you can do when you are dealing with a physical space. But so we're trying to figure out, how do we translate that now into something that you can pack up into a truck and travel? I see that Allison has her hand raised.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, there's someone who has raised the hand.
Yes, go ahead, Allison.
Bruce? No? Alison, okay.
Unmute would be best. You think I learned after nearly 2 years, but no, I'm still doing it. Thanks. And sort of building off what Sam was saying, and Alana, you kind of were in that direction. I work as the exhibition and education coordinator at the Archives of Ontario here in Toronto, and quite often we have traveling exhibits, and we have an exhibit space, and very interested in you know, as we can, building immersive exhibitions with the environment that we have. But the quite often, and actually just got an inquiry about this morning, we have, we're a provincial archives for the province of Ontario, and there are a lot of archives around this province and smaller museums that ask us, can you send us a version of the on-site exhibit that you have? And we have, you know, we have traveling exhibits that are one version of that, but they want us to send the immersive version that we designed for our space. And we don't do that. You know, we're not a design shop, and they want us to do that for us, for them, of course. And I'm curious, and Alana, I know you were talking about, you just started talking about that, but in thinking about traveling exhibits, how can that be something that's immersive, and even like pointing towards how can you make a traveling exhibit immersive? How can you make something that has to travel and be packed up, with the understanding that the host institution does some of that work? How can that be have some of that immersion and that, you know, that environment design, with knowing that it's temporary and it needs to be flexible, because that's something that I'm really concerned with and think about a lot, because we're doing a number of different projects, sort of winding down our traveling exhibit program in some ways, but building up a different version of it. And we have our own struggle with our on-site space, which is about to reopen to the public after 18 months, 19 months, but is very low traffic. And like, there's a lot of, you know, challenges with it. But the traveling versions of our exhibits, we have different versions of them, and we do pop-up exhibits in different spaces, and people ask us to send them our old on-site exhibits and want it to look the same. And I just, it can never be the same. I'm wondering,
Well,
this is a lot. I'm going to stop here.
I'll tell you one thing that, you know, in order to, we have, the ice wall is enormous, right? We have one of the largest ice walls around. We had to install a chiller or something or other on the roof of our building.
Condenser, I think, yeah.
A condenser, yes, thank you. The chiller's inside. Anyway, like that doesn't go anywhere. So there's some stuff that is just in place forever. You know, so for we're opening a temporary gallery that will turn into a traveling exhibition in 2023. And you know, right now we're using enormous graphics that we print on fabric. So, you know, floor to ceiling in height, and, you know, 10 or 20 feet wide. And it's on fabric. And so all you need is a little frame around it, and it's very lightweight, and it's very easy to take down and to travel. And we're also looking at sounds, right? How can we have sound effects in there and really help? And we're looking at using gobos and lights to create the caustic pattern of light reflecting off of moving water. So all of these ways to try and help ground you in the idea that you are in Venice, in a low cost, easy to pack up way. That's the start of that answer.
If I may too, we at Moment Factory, our roots are really in the touring rock show industry. And I think the idea is really to, like, you know, Arctic Adventure, we designed for a permanent setting. So we would have probably come up with a totally different, you know, experience and or design if we had in mind a touring exhibit. Not that this cannot be reproduced in a similar space somewhere else at some point. But the idea is that when you design something that will travel, there's always, and especially with technology, this idea of kind of tapping on local resources as well. Can you rent stuff wherever you are, instead of having to pack up and travel everything like you would do on tour and things? And in our experience, COVID has changed a lot that because oh, it's finished.
Yes, we should.
Okay. Ta-ta. No, I'm kidding.
Thank
But,
you all so much for coming. And